I sat down with former Secretary of State Antony Blinken for his first interview since leaving office. As we're all trying to make sense of these tariffs and what it all means, I asked him what he thought of President Trump's tariff policy as he watched it all play out from the Rose Garden.
This was global tariffs, including against the very countries that we need to be with us to deal with a problem like the problem posed by China. So that's what first struck me. This seemed to be America against the world, not America taking on discrete problems that do require.
Have you gotten phone calls from your former counterparts, if you will, abroad after this to say, you know, what am I supposed to do? How should I deal with this?
I've gotten a lot of phone calls. All I can tell you, though, is I'm not in the business of giving foreign leaders advice. But folks who called me, former colleagues, I certainly listened to what they were saying. And Andrew, here's the problem. Look, it may.
What are they saying?
So, first of all, if they're allies, or maybe in some cases former allies, they're aghast at the United States going at them. And what I'm hearing is that here's I think the real challenge. It's possible that in some of these instances there'll be a negotiation, and maybe something concrete and positive will develop. But the message that this is sent to countries around the world, including some of our closest allies and partners, is we need to move away from the United States. We can't rely on the United States. We've got to work around the United States. So we're going to be doing more with each other, and in some cases, more with China. You now have the EU trade reps meeting with their Chinese counterparts. The South Koreans and Japanese, for the first time in 5 years, meeting with their Chinese counterparts. So my concern is that this is pushing countries that we need with us to deal with a lot of challenges away from us and maybe even toward China.
How do you see the negotiations with China itself playing out? The president has now talked about effectively tariffs that could get ratcheted up to 104% effectively of the price tag of things that are being imported into our country.
Well, this is an extraordinary game of chicken, because I think it's very hard for Xi Jinping to back down or be seen as backing down. So they're going to have to find some way out of this spiral.
They are, or we are?
In effect, I think both of us, because I think this heads to a very bad place. Last time around, the president struck a deal with China. China vowed to buy a lot of stuff from us. They never actually did, in part because of COVID, maybe in part because they weren't going to follow through, but there was an off-ramp. There needs to be some other kind of off-ramp here that allows Xi Jinping to do what he needs to do to cover himself politically, but also get some kind of result that the president can point to. But again, I come back to this proposition. Look, when we're dealing with China alone, and there are many unfair trade practices that everyone's very familiar with, the overcapacity problem is real, especially on cutting-edge technologies. But when we're dealing with China alone, we're what, 20% of world GDP? When we're aligned, as we were just a few months ago, with partners in Europe, partners in East Asia, we're 50 or 60% of world GDP. A lot harder for China to ignore. That's the way to get results. So I'm afraid that, you know, we're heading to a place where instead of it being America first, it's America alone.
Your last speech in your role as Secretary of State, you talked about Germany and Japan being our closest allies. Yeah. We are now apparently in some form of negotiation or conversation with Japan over these tariffs. Mm-hmm. What do you think the relationship ultimately looks like after this? And do you think that the toothpaste is out of the tube, that the relationship has fundamentally changed at all for countries where we were allies or are allies, whether it's Germany or Japan or the UK, given what's happened here even just the past week?
Look, one of the most extraordinary developments over the last 80 years, which in the sweep of human history is not a lot, is the fact that over the last 4 years when I was on the job, probably our two closest partners were Germany and Japan. That's an incredible story. The idea that we would put that in doubt.
Do you think it's genuinely in doubt, or do you think that this is something that can be walked back from?
Look, something has been, I think, irretrievably lost. Now, fundamentally, they still have strong interests, and we, of course, have a strong interest in both partnerships. But this question of trust, which is the foundation of the partnership, that has now been called into question. And so even if they think, well, maybe we'll get someone down the road who does business in something in a way that we're more used to, they really can't count on the fact that that's going to be enduring.
Right.
And putting that genie back in the bottle is going to be hard.
The art of the deal when it comes to tariffs. There's a real question mark of how long this could take. Yeah. Do you get a Bretton Woods style kind of deal where everybody gets involved? Are they all bilateral one-offs? Does this go on for months and months and months, in which case you have a paralysis in terms of investment? You have some leaders, I think, looking at our country saying, well, maybe I should wait, see what the courts say. Maybe the markets go down, and that puts pressure on, Republican members of the House and the Senate to put pressure on the president. How do you see these dynamics?
First, it would be good to know what the actual objective is, because I've heard a multiplicity of rationales for why we're doing this. Is it to raise revenue? Is it to bring manufacturing back to the United States? Is it to deal with trade imbalances? What is it? And we keep hearing different stories. So I think it would be very helpful for the administration to come forward and make clear what they're actually trying to do. Now, if this is about what the president has talked about for a long time, which is the sense that other countries, to quote him, are ripping us off, and the way he sees that is through trade imbalances, well, it's not at all clear to me that tariffs and trade imbalances are that closely connected.
Is there any way in your mind this could end well?
At this point, I think maybe there are some deals where there are egregious imbalances. Maybe they get corrected. But I am more than deeply concerned that the message that we've sent to the world is you can't count on, you can't trust America. And the net result of that is they'll be looking for ways to work around us, away from us, and that's not going to be good for us.
I want to pivot to Iran for just a moment. President Trump saying that the U.S. will have direct talks with Iran on Saturday, apparently to discuss a nuclear deal. Iran officials are saying that this is not going to be a direct conversation, it will be an indirect conversation. What do you think is really happening?
Well, first, if there are talks, whether they're direct or indirect, I applaud that, because it's good if we're talking, and it's good if we're trying to do something about the nuclear program. My sense is that President Trump would like a deal. He'd prefer to get a deal than to have to use military means. One, he doesn't want another war. Two, military means in dealing with their nuclear program less effective than actually having a durable agreement. And we had that agreement. We had the agreement that President Obama reached. We had their nuclear program in a box. Unfortunately, President Trump tore it up. At the time, he said that he was going to produce a better deal. He didn't. Now there's an opportunity.